Namo Namaha Sarvesham Bhavatam Swagatam. Okay, today I'm going to begin reading Nandikeshvara Kashika. I already mentioned this text in my first video. And this text is not very long, and I think I will probably need 3 or 4 videos of about 40 to 45 minutes each to complete the whole text. And as I said, this will all be available on my new web page. Okay, before I read the text, I have to say a little bit about the date and the nature and the character of this text. So to make things more simple and clear, let me start by saying that this text consists of 3 parts, 3 elements. First is these 14 Maheshvara Sutras, or 14 Shiva Sutras, as they are referred in the text here, which should not be confused by Vasugupta's Shiva Sutras. These sutras belong to the tradition of grammarians, and it usually is printed at the beginning of Panini Ashtadhyay, and it has a particular purpose. And I will explain what the purpose is. The second element, the second part of this, are the karikas themselves. The karikas are 26 in number. Actually, text mentioned 26. But here, in my text, and there are different variants of reading of the text, in my text there are 27 karikas. And the third part is the commentary by Upamanyu on Nandikeshvara's karikas that explain the nature of the Shiva Sutras. So let's go back to the first part, the 14 Maheshvara Sutras. So these 14 Maheshvara Sutras are the articulate representation of these 14 inarticulate sounds of these sutras of Panini. They are usually, as I said, printed at the beginning of Ashtadhyay and have a particular purpose. Now, traditionally in India, many of very famous writers and very Sanskrit scholars, they like to write in a very short, abbreviated form, and so in the form of sutras. And this is widely known. Some of the more famous sutras are Brahma Sutras, Patanjali Yoga Sutras, the Shiva Sutras of Vasugupta, and also Panini Ashtadhyay. It's also written in the form of sutras, in a very abbreviated form. One of the reasons why they like to do that, because it is easier to be memorized by students. So students can easily adopt it and then think about, contemplate that, and develop the interpretation mentally in their own heads of each of these, each of the sutras. But also it represents a difficulty, because if you just start reading a text and it is written in the form of sutras, it will be totally unclear without a commentary or explanation of the teacher. So, but the purpose of these sutras is so they allow Panini to write in the abbreviated form, in the form of sutras. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to do it, because, for example, these Shiva Sutras are the particular new arrangement of Sanskrit alphabet. And so, when Panini wants to refer to all the vowels, he only says ach. When he wants to refer to consonants without ha, the last letter ha, all the other consonants, he would just say yar or yan for the semi-vowels, and so on and so on. These are called pratyaharas. So this is the purpose, this is the meaning, this is the purpose of these this is the purpose of these sutras. And so this is, but these sutras also have, as some claim, as Nandikeshvara claim, they have also a philosophical meaning. And also we already find in Mahabhashya, Patanjali mentions the philosophical explanation, the explanation of these Panini sutras, of these Shiva Sutras. And so Nandikeshvara wrote this Karika where he explains what actually is the meaning of these sutras. What do they mean? And so what do they mean? They amount to basically interpreting the unfoldment of the creation of the universe from the perspective of the Sanskrit alphabet. And this is using the symbolism of this alphabet. Because originally these 49 or 50 letters, if we count Ksha, they are energy abiding in the Shiva, in Shiva's consciousness, that unfold in the form of tattvas and assume the form of subjective and objective existence. And the term that Padu used in his book Vaj was the phonematic emanation. So if we adopt that, if as the tradition says, the Nandikeshvara was contemporary of Panini, then this theory of phonematic emanation is a very ancient one. And it did not only originate with Tantras. And as we know, Abhinavagupta was very fond of this, and he devoted almost the entire chapter of his 3 of Tantraloka to this phonematic emanation. He also did a study of this in his Paratrishka Vivarana. Very difficult but very important text. And also this is found in many other tantras, and you will find it also in Shiva Sutras by Vasugupta. There also in the beginning of the first chapter, there is this Matrika Chakra described. So this is that as now, why is this text, Nandikeshvara Kashika, a Shaiva text? Why is that so? Because the basic principles of the Shaiva philosophy are found here. And then, as I said, maybe for the first time. First of all, we have this idea of inseparability of Shiva and Shakti. So inseparability of Shiva and Shakti is actually found for the first time here, that two in one supreme reality, Shiva and Shakti. And 2 examples are given here, actually in the same shloka, in the same karika. The first one is Chandrika Yoho, meaning that Shiva and Shakti are identical and inseparable, just like the moon and its light and its rays. And the second one is Vag Arthayoho Yadvat. And all of you who have studied a little bit of Sanskrit poetry will remember this famous verse by Kalidasa, the first verse of Raghuvamsha, that begins with this Vagatha viva sampraktau Vagatha pratipataye Jagata pitarau vande Parvati parameshwarau. So for the purpose of the understanding of Vagatha pratipataye, for the purpose of understanding of the relationship between word and its meaning, I pay my obeisance to the parents of the universe, Shiva and Shakti. And these Shiva and Shakti are Vagatha viva sampraktau. They are mixed up, joined together, just like word and its meaning. So these ideas are also found there. So Shiva and Shakti, inseparability of Shiva and Shakti. The second idea found here is actually aham. Many people have claimed that this was developed by Upamanyu and by the. But if, as I said, if we accept that this text comes, it's as old as Panini, then these ideas are very ancient. And the idea is very much the same. This aham represents the totality of universal consciousness, from A to Ha, all the letters of Sanskrit alphabet joining together. Now, the letters of Sanskrit alphabet are that actually constitute our consciousness. So consciousness consists of letters, words, and sentences on the subjective side. And the objective side, it consists of the various objects named through these letters. And so the totality of consciousness is expressed by that aham. Furthermore, in this text we also find all the 36 tattvas. But as we will see as I read this text, some of these tattvas are not identical, they are different. And finally, the idea of Parameshvara, or Paramashiva, as transcending all the 36 tattvas, just the way Abhinavagupta understands it, is also found here. So it's a really very interesting and I would say fascinating text. How are things developed here? Okay, so now I'm going to start reading the text. Okay, so as I said, the text consists of 3 parts, and so yes, I have to say a couple of words also on the commentary by Upamanyu. The commentary is called Tattva Vimarshini, and it is most likely, as K.C. Pandit suggests, much later work, probably in 10th, 11th century, because he quotes here many tantras, and these tantras were already probably well known, and the major commentaries were also written on these tantras by the time of Upamanyu. And then we know also that the author, 14th century author Sri Pandita, quotes Upamanyu, mentions him. So he must have lived sometimes between 10th and 14th century, most likely 11th or 12th century, at the time of this, when he wrote his commentary. So as I am reading, I will have to tell you which part am I reading. Am I reading the sutras themselves, or karika, or the commentary? So the first karika here is by Nandikeshvara. So this is the introduction. Natyavasane nataraja rajo nanada dhakkam navapanchavaram udhartu kamaha sanaka adi siddhan etat vimarshe Shiva Sutra jalam. So Natyavasane, at the end of his dance, but here I have to say that probably here this Natya, the word Natya is not correct, because usually Natya refers to the dance of everybody else but not Lord Shiva. Shiva's dance is usually referred to as Nata, so it probably should be Nattavasane. So at the end of time, at the end of his dance, then Nataraja Raja, the Lord of dance, which means Lord Shiva, Nanada, he played his drum, and this drum is called Dhakkam or Damaru, as it is better known. And he played that drum Navapanchavaram 14 times. 9 and 5 times, which is 14 times. Udhartu Kamaha. And why he played that? Because he desired to elevate Sanaka and other siddhas, other sages. And Eta Vimarshe Shiva Sutra jalam. Now this portion of this shloka, of this karika, becomes clear from the commentary. So because the commentator says, ahamiti sheshaha. So to complete the understanding of this karika, we have to supply aham. Aham here doesn't mean that supreme self, supreme universal consciousness, it just means I. So I, and I is Nandikeshvara here. Aham, etat vimarshe, having reflected this Shiva Sutra Jalam, these collections of Shiva Sutras, I am explaining them. I am explaining this, their nature, their character. So next three shlokas are by Upamanyu. These are his Mangala shlokas. Namak Shivaya Devaya Sarvagyaya Mahatmane Yasya Unmesha Nimesha Vyam Vyakta Vyaktam Ivan Jagat. So my pranam to Lord Shiva, who is God, who is Deva, who is ever-shining consciousness, who is Sarvagyaya, who is all-knowing, and who is Mahatmane. Mahatmane is the great self. Great self means that is the self that abides in all other selves. Yasya Unmesha Nimesha Vyam Vyakta Avyaktam Idam Jagat. And anybody who has read and studied the Spanda Karika will recognize this line very quickly and easily. In Spanda Karika it says, Yasya Unmesha Nimesha Vyam Jagata Pralayam. But the meaning is basically the same. By unfolding and opening and closing of whose eyes, the world becomes vyakta and avyakta, moves, you can say, from unmanifest to manifest, and then also from unmanifest back to unmanifest. And in Spanda Karika, Jagata Pralayodaya, the Pralaya Udaya, the rise and the dissolution of the universe take place by his closing and opening of his eyes. Next shloka by Upamanyu. This is Gurum Shivam Kumaram Cha Shiva Tattva Visharadam Pranamya Nandikesha Adin Shiva Bhaktan Muhuhu Muhuhu. So Pranamya, paying my pranam, giving my pranam to the teacher, to Lord Shiva and Kumara. Kumara means Ganesha, Lord Ganesha. Shiva Tattva Visharadam, who is the expert, Visharada, in the reality, in the knowledge of the reality of Shiva. She's Shiva Tattva Visharadam. Pranamya, and then also Nandikesha Adin Shiva Bhaktan, and also pay my respect to Nandikesha and other bhaktas of Lord Shiva. Muhuhu, muhuhu, again and again. Kashikam Adi Sutranam Nandikesha Kritam Shubham Loka Upakarinim Divyam Vyakaromi Yahamati. So Vyakaromi, I Upamanyu, am writing and making the commentary of this Adi Sutranam Kashikam, on this Kashika, on the first sutra, on the original sutras, the first sutras, and composed by Nandikesha, Nandikesha Kratam, and Shubham, which is auspicious, and Loka Upakarinim, and which is helpful to ordinary people, to people. Loka Upakarinim, which is which grants welfare to the ordinary people, and which is divyam, which is divine in nature. So those were three sutras by Upamanyu, his Mangala, basically, his Mangalas. Now he's beginning his commentary. Iha kalu Sakala Lokanayakaha Parameshwaraha Paramashivaha Sanaka Ananda Sanat Kumara Adin Shrodrin Nandikesha, Patanjali, Vyagrapad, Vasishtha Adin, Udhartu Kamo, Damaru Ninada Vyajena, Chaturtasha Sutri Atmakam, Tatvam Upadidesha. So now, in the Parameshvara, the Parameshvara, and that Parameshvara is explained as Paramashiva, the Supreme Shiva, who is Sakala Lokanayakaha, who is the leader of the entire universe. Now, what happened here? He, desiring to elevate Sanaka, Sanandana, Sanat Kumara, and Adi Shrotrim, the listeners, literally, which means the students of the Vedas, Nandikesha, and also Nandikesha, and Patanjali, and Vyagrapad, who is also a grammarian, contemporary with Panini, and Vasishtha, and others. So he, desiring to do this, to elevate them, he instructed Upadidesha, Chatur Sutri Atmakam Tattvam, the reality in the form of this Chatur Sutri, this is Vigu compound, this 14 sutras, and how Damaranada Vyajena, in disguise of the sound of his Damaru, that drum that he's used, that the Shiva's drum. So in disguise of this, Tadanute Sarve Muni Indriyaha Chirakalam Ashitamasmakam Tattvam Chaturdasha Sutra Atmakam Upadidesha iti Matva Yas Asya Sutra Jalasya Tatvartham Nandikeshvaro Janati iti Nandikeshvaram Pranipatya Prashtavantaha. Now, Tat Anu, after that. So, after that, what happened was that these munis, Sarve, Indra Varyaha, the best of the munis. So they instructed us, who Chirakalam Ashritam Asmakam, to us who were dependent on them for a very long time. Itimatva, so but having first realized that this Asya Sutra Jalasya Tattvartham Nandikeshvara Janati iti. But first they have received that knowledge from Nandikeshvara. So they have first, having realized that Nandikeshvara knows the reality of these sutras, of this collection of these sutras. So they have approached him, these munis have approached Nandikeshvara, and Prashtavantaha, and they asked, they pranamya. First they have bowed down to him, and then they asked him to explain this. Tataha teshu prashtavatsu saha shadvimshati karika rupena tattvam sutranam upadeshtum icchan idam a chachakshe natyavasane iti. Now, Tataha teshu prashtavatsu, then saha. So he, Nandikeshvara, to those who ask him, explained, desiring icchan, desiring to Tattvam Sutranam Upadeshtum icchan, desiring to instruct the knowledge of the reality of these sutras. He expressed that knowledge in Shatvimshati Karika, in the form of 26 karikas. And then the first, indicating the very first word of this karika, Natyavasane iti, by beginning with Natyavasane. Aham iti sheshaha. And then, as I said before, to complete the meaning of the first karika, Upamanyu says we have to supply aham. Aham, I have already explained that in the beginning. Nata Raja Raja iti anena mangalani darshitani. Now, usually Sanskrit texts, mostly, not always, but mostly, begin with Mangala Charanas. And here we don't have that. So he says that instead of this Mangala Charanas, we have this word, Nata Raja Raja, which refers to Shiva, which is Mangala by itself, just because it stands for Lord Shiva. Saha tu Atma Tattvam Vag Adya Gochara iti Jnapanartham Dhakkani Nada Vyajena Sanaka Adin Udhatu Kama Nalapanchavaram Chaturdashavaram Svantargatam Atma Tattvam Prakataitum Natyavasane Nanada Ninaditavan. Okay, so Saha, he, to Atma Tattvam Vag Adya Gochare, to now Vag, Pani, Pada, Payu, Pasthani. These are 5 karmendriyas. So Vag here stands, Vag Adi, Vag and other karmendriyas, the organs of action. So he says that the Atma Tattva is not in the sphere, is not within the sphere of that which can be experienced by the karmendriyas, by these organs of action. To Jnapanartham, to indicate that. He, at the end of his dance, Natyavasane, Nanada, Naditavan. Nanada is explained as Naditavan, which means he played. What did he play? Nava Panchavaram. Nava Pancha, 4 and 9 and 5 times. And that is explained as Chaturdashavaram, as or 14 times. He played his drum, Damaru, in order to elevate Sanaka and other sages, in the disguise of the sound of his drum. Dhakalinada Vyajena. And in order, why? Prakataitum Svantar Gatam Atma Tattvam. In order to manifest, open up, Prakataitum. Svantar Gatam Atma Tattvam. That Atma Tattva, the reality of the self, which is Svantar Gatam, which is internal, which is inside the self, which is contained internally. So it is not external, it cannot be experienced by the senses, by the karmendriya. That's what he said. Aham tad etad vitatani nada udbhuta varna atmakam adyam atirahasyam etad Shiva Sutra jalam Shiva Sabhanti Sutra samuham kalyanam Rupa Sutra samuham va vimarshe vicharya sputi karomi iti artha. So aham, I sputi karomi, I make clear, I clarify. Now what? This Shiva Sutra Jalam, Etat Shiva Sutra, this collection of these sutras, and which sutras are Atirahasyam, are extremely sacred, and which are Adyam, which are original, which are the first sutras. Vitata Ninada Udbhuta Varna Atmakam, which are in the form of the letters, articulate letters, manifest letters, created by Vitata Ninada, by the sound, by the Vitata. Vitata means expanding, but here means, most likely it means loud, by the loud sound of the drum. And then this Shiva Sutra Jalam is further explained as in two more ways. Shiva Sambandhi Sutra Samuham, as the collection of the sutras Shiva Sambandhi related to Shiva, or Kalyana Rupa Sutra Samuham, or those collection of the sutras which are Kalyana, which are of the nature of welfare, Kalyana, which are beneficial, also auspicious. And then Vimarshe, now he is explaining the meaning of the word Vimarshe here in the first karika. Why? Because this is an irregular verbal form. Vimarshe iti chandasam bodhyam. So he says that Vimarshe should be understood to be chandasam, to belong to the Vedic language. Because Vedic language did not follow the Paninian grammar. So various irregular forms occur there. So he says it should be understood in that way. It is not, although it is possible that also this Vimarsha is used here because it is used here because of the meter, to be able to fit in there. So, but also here I forget to say Vimarsha Vicharya. So Vimarsha is explained as Vicharya, having thought of, having contemplated. So having contemplated the nature of these sutras, now I'm explaining to them, to you. So that is the introductory commentary by Upamanyu. Now the second karika by Nandikeshvara. Atra sarvatra sutreshu antyavarna chatustakam dhatu artham sarupadishtam panini adi ishta siddhaye. Atra sarvatra, now in all of these sutras, it says Antya Varna Chaturdashakam, all the last 14 letters. So now, for example, Ayun, Lark, Eon. So these are the Shiva Sutras. Now all the last letters, Ayun, Lark, Eon, all these letters are the last letters. So that's what he is referring to, these letters. All these 14 last letters in all these sutras. Dhatu Artham, now for the purpose of the root, and he will explain in the commentary what that means. They are instructed to Dhatu Artham, for the purpose of the root. And Panini Adi Ishta Siddhaye, to enable Panini Ishta Siddhaye, to accomplish what he desires. Panini and Adi. Panini and other grammarians. And what he wants is to write his grammar. So it is these 14 last letters, which at Dhatu, he says, are for the purpose of Panini to write his grammar. And this is now, next I'm reading commentary by Upamanyu. Upamanyu is explaining this. Anubandha Anubandhyaha Panini Adi Udeshyaka Eva iti aha atra iti. Now, Anubandha is a technical term. And that technical term refers to all these last letters. Anubandhas are the last letters. So they are Panini Adi Udeshyaka. They are literally aiming at Panini, etc. Which means they are helpful to Panini. They are for the purpose of Panini and other grammarians. Iti, eva iti aha, atra iti, eshu. So atra here means sarveshu. So in all these sutras. Antyam varna iti va padha. So this is another reading, another variant here. So here we have Antya Varna Chatur Dasham. But here he says another reading. There is another reading which is Antyam Varna. And then Ubhayatra api bahuvrihihi kadamba anyapadatha samasa antaha. So, but here he says that all of these, in both of these cases, if we accept it as Antyam Varna iti or Antyam Varna Chaturdasham, in both of these cases, the compound here is Bahurihi compound. Chaturdasha iti vapadha. And then also, another reading is Chaturdasha. Here we have Chaturdasham, and here Chaturdasha vapadha. And if that's the case, he says tada tat purusha. Then it is tat purusha compound, he said. Dviekayoho iti vat chaturdasha iti prayogaha. This is a little bit, it's very simple explanation, but it's difficult, it's kind of complicated. So, dviekayoho iti vat. Now, he's trying to explain how is that the Chaturdasha is used there. Chaturdasha means literally 4 and 10. Namapancha, I'm sorry, Namapancha. 9 and 5, 9 and 5, which makes 14. So he's now trying to explain how is that actually, that should have been written in plural, not in singular as it is written now. So how is that? And then he gives an example here, Dviekayoho itivat. And then basically he's quoting the Panini Sutra, Dviekayoho, Dvivachana ekavachane. So in that Panini Sutra, the same thing is found. Now, but the point here is that he's trying to say that Panini actually, although he said they are used in singular, and so sometimes these numeral adjectives are used instead of numbers, instead of the numbers. So actually like this. So numeral, so it would be dvi and eka, dva, 2 and 1. But they stand here for numbers, for dvitva and ekatva. So there is sometimes in Sanskrit they are used in the sense of abstract noun. Bhava pradhana nirdesha. Bhava pradhana nirdesha. So they are used in sense of bhava, pratyaya. So that they are, and if they are used in that sense, then they don't need to be written in plural. So the same thing is here. And so itivat, just like in Panini uses that, so he is also using this namapancha in that same sense. So there is no contradiction here, he says. Keshu chit pustakeshu antya varne chaturdasha kam iti padha. This is yet another. In some books, he says, we have another alternative explanation. Dhatu artham. Now he's explaining the meaning of this dhatu artham from the second part of the verse. Dhatu artham. Dhatu mulaka shabda shastra pravrti artham iti arthaha. So the meaning here is that the purpose is for pravrti, for Shabda Shastra Pravrti, for the composition of the Shabda Shastra, which is grammar. Which dhatu mulakam, which is rooted, you can say, which is based in dhatus, in the roots. And then Atya Varnajalam Shabda iti nyayena. So he says that all this Antya Varnaja, all these collections of all these last 14 letters are also Shabda. And basically now this is the justification why this text also has a philosophical explanation. So they are not only letters, they are also words and sentences. Tadha, and this is an example, Cha uktam Indrena, as it has been said by Indra. And Indra is an ancient grammarian, pre-Paninian grammarian. And according to tradition, this is what he says. This is the quote from his grammar. Antyavarna samubhuta dhatavaha prakirtitaha iti. So the dhatus, the roots, are known to be to come into existence, sambhuta, from these last letters, Antyavarna. Okay, now finally we have the first Shiva Sutra, the first explanation of the first Shiva Sutra. And that Shiva Sutra, A-I-U-N, Ayun, Ayun. Now, this is the Karika by Nandikeshvara. Akaro Brahma Rupaha Syat Nirgunaha Sarvavastushu Chitkalam Im Samashritya Jagadrupa Ishvara. So he says the Akara, the letter R, is Brahma, Brahman. Nirguna, Nirguna Brahman, which is in all, which is omnipresent, Sarvavastushu, abiding in all things. Chitkalam Im Samashritya Jagadrupa Unishvaraha. And then this Brahman, Samashritya, having taken recourse to Chitkalam, and then Chitkala is Im, is letter E, from this sutra. Chitkala, the energy of consciousness, which means this Shakti. So having taken recourse to his Shakti, he becomes Ishvaraha Jagadrupaha. Ishvara in the form of the universe. Now the commentary by Upamanyu. Tatra adyena sutrena sarva varnanam samasta bhuvanancha sam udbhava rupam svatma tattvam upadishtam ityaha akaro brahma iti. Now, by this first karika, by this first sutra, it is instructed that the Svatma Tattva, the reality of the self, that out of that reality of that Svatma Tattva, one's own self, is samudbhava rupam, manifests as all the letters, all the other letters, all the other varnas, phonemes, and also all the worlds. Samasta bhuvanam. Akaro Brahmaiti. So he says Akara here means Brahman. Aha Parameshvaro Nirgunaha Im Mayam Ashritya Uhu Vyapakaha Sagunaha Ishvaraha Asit iti Sutrarthaha Suchita. So Aha, the letter A is Nirguna Parameshvara. Parameshvara without gunas, without qualities. And then having Samashritya, taken recourse to Maya, which is the Chitkala, the lowest aspect of this Svatantriya is Maya. So having taken recourse to his Maya, Vyakapam, Vyapakaha, Sagunaha, Ishvaraha, Na Asit. So Na means Asit, means has become Ishvara, Saguna, with gunas, who is Vyapaka, all pervasive, who pervades the whole universe. Okay. Now, Sarvavastushu. Sarvavastushu pashanti Para pashyanti madhyana vaikari adishu im chitkalam im iti atra gayatrim im chaitivat ikaro bodhyaha. Now he says that in Sarvavastu, here stands for these levels of speech. As we know, there are these 4 levels of speech: para, pashyanti, madhyama, and vaikari. So that's the meaning of it. And chitkalam im. And im here stands for chitkala, the energy of consciousness. And then that also implies the long letter E also, not only the short letters. That's what he says. Atra ikara tu sutre nauditaha, ikara eva prakatitaha. He says, but originally in the sutra, it is only ikara, long E, is not indicated, only short E originally. And sarva sambhava kale a I u ra iti varna panchakameva sarvesham ekona pancha shabda panchashat ekona panchashat aksharanam bhuta panchakanam panchavarna vargana kramena yoni. Now he says that sarga sambhava kale, at the time of the creation of the sarga, of the universe, letters a, I, u, r, and r, these 5 letters, are yonihi, are the origin, the source of creation in order, kramena, of 49 other letters. This ekuna panchashat, 49 letters of aksharas. And also bhuta panchakam, the 5 elements, and also panchavarga. This panchavarga is the 5 vargas of consonants, k, k, g, g, and so on. Atra pramanam. Now, what is the authority here to actually have to interpret this in this way? What is the authority here? He says the authority here is the Shruti. Is the Shruti, and he quotes here. He quotes here from Chandogya. Asadva idam agre asit. So before creation, there was asat, non-existence. Tato, and tataha, from there, sadajayate, the existence is born. Iti shruti. Asat brahma vai nishchayena agre srishtehe purvam idam aksharatmakam asit. And then, so this asat brahma, and nishchayena, indeed, agre srishte, before agre srishte purvam, before the creation of the universe, he existed as akshara. And akshara means, of course, 2 things, and this is very well known. Means letter, and means it is imperishable. So that imperishable. Tato aksharat asato vai sat sagunam ajayata jatam ityartha. And from there, tato aksharat, from that akshara, asataha, which is non-existence, va sat sagunam ajayate, and then that sat, the existence, which is saguna, which possesses qualities, is born. Taduktam Gitayam, as it has been stated in the Bhagavad Gita. Aksharanam akaro asmi iti. Among the letters, I am letter A. Among all the letters, I am letter A. Now here, in the next shloka, akaraha sarvavarna agriyaha prakashaha parameshwaraha Adyam antena samyogat ahamiti eva jayate. Aham iti eva jayate. So this is now, this aham in this fourth karika appears for the first time. And as I said, if this is really the case, that this text is comes, that Nandikeshvara lived at the time of Panini, that would definitely indicate that this philosophy already existed at this time. So next time, in my next video on Nandikeshvara Kashika, we will start from this and see how is this aham explained and understood in this text. So for today, this is enough, and next video will probably be on Sankhya Karika. Namo.